Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Maono PD200X dynamic microphone. Like all of my microphone reviews, I'll be using the microphone itself to do all of the voiceover work for the entire video, with no edits in post outside of making sure that the gain levels are where they need to be. With that being said, let's get into the specs. The PD200X is a dual input microphone, so you can use this via a USB Type-C input or XLR. This is a dynamic microphone with a cardioid polar pattern that has a sample rate of 48 kHz at 24 bits. This has a frequency response of 40 Hz to 16 kHz with an adjustable range of 0 to 42 decibels. The max sound pressure level is less than 130 decibels. Inside of the box, you will find the microphone that is attached to the shock mount, a USB Type-C cable that has a USB Type-A input on one end with an adapter on it that is a USB-C input. After that, you have a thread adapter that will adapt this from a 5/8 to 3/8, and last you have the user manual. The list price for this on Amazon is $79.99 with frequent sales and discounts, so definitely look out for those. Next, let's cover the physical features, starting on the bottom where you will find the inputs. You have a USB Type-C input, the XLR input, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and the RGB switch. For the RGB colors, you have rainbow, white, red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Holding down the RGB button will actually turn the lights off also. Next, you have the shock mount with the stand adapter. This is fixed to the microphone, but it does allow for some rotation of the mic body. So if this isn't exactly where you want it to be when you mount this, you can adjust this, which is a big help. Above the shock mount, you have the 2-in-1 digital knob that allows you to increase or decrease the gain level. And clicking this in will change this over to the headphone jack volume for audio monitoring. The color around the knob is green when you are adjusting the gain levels and blue when you are adjusting the audio monitoring levels. The brightness of the light around this knob increases or decreases when you adjust the knob and will flash when you hit the max level. Above this is the mute button. If you click this in, the color around the 2-in-1 digital knob will turn red. Above the mute button is the RGB light ring and the wind foam, which you can remove to expose the microphone and more of the RGB light. You will want this microphone in a horizontal position to get the best audio and not in a vertical position. Moving on, let's cover the Maono Link software here. And so this is the icon that you will see. This is the microphone that we have. If you were using a different microphone, it would have an icon for that one. Once you click on this, it opens up the standard portion here, and so you have the mute button, and then you can see that this is me talking. This is going to be the gain levels here, so if I increase this too much or I get too close, then this is going to peak red, but right now we're okay, we're in the green. The gain function here, I have this turned all the way up currently. I could turn this down. I do have the headphone volume mic monitoring on, that's at max. The tone, so this is original. I could change this over to deep. And then I could change this also over to neutral. So you can change this to any of these that you want, or we have the legacy here. And then I could just keep it on legacy if we want, but I'm gonna go ahead and switch this back to original. Another cool thing is through the software, and this is something that you're not gonna get through an XLR cable. So you do need to use the USB Type-C cable for this, is with all of these controls, this is essentially acting as an audio interface versus if you're using an XLR cable, you would use an audio interface to control all of these different things. With this though, you do get to control the RGB. I currently have it on, and then they have the brightness at 100. I'll make sure footage pops up right now showcasing this when I do turn this down or turn it all the way back up, and then choosing the different colors. So instead of just using the buttons on this to change the color, you essentially get to now use this through the software, which is a very nice touch. And I do like that you can change the brightness, because this is something that you cannot do with the controls on the microphone. Now clicking the advanced tab. So we still have the gain levels here. So this is still stuff that you can adjust, but you also get access to the EQ settings. So right now I have this with a high pass filter, and all that's really doing is any type of sharp spikes in audio. It's trying to limit that and bring that volume down so that you don't get this flare up into the red here. And then with that, it could crack the audio, it could distort the audio. So this is helping with that. So this is just flat, right? So this would be our flat. I've been using the high pass filter. Next, you have the presence boost with this, and this is obviously just going to increase the vocal presence that you have. And then last is the combo. So you have the high pass filter and the presence boost with this. Typically though, for me, I just leave it on the high pass filter. The limiter here, I don't typically use this, but this is going to just limit the peak in audio. So if you don't want this to have these sharp peaks, you can help with that. And then compressor is down at the bottom. Same thing, we're just going to compress the audio. So if you're trying to make it so maybe you're not getting any type of audio distortion, and I could see this being useful for anybody that is, maybe you have a loud speaking voice and you struggle with that, or maybe if you're singing, this could be something that would help here as well. So this is going to be the limiter here, and I get to change that to whatever decibel that I want, all the way to -40 decibels, all the way back up. And then we have compressor here, same thing, but I get to go all the way to, and at that point that was -80 decibels, so you wouldn't have heard me with that. And so that's going to wrap up the software. So now that I've covered the specs, the physical features, and the software, let's get into what I like about this microphone. And I do want to note that up until this point, I've been using the USB input. So the first portion before I got to the software, that was just default. So I wasn't using the software with that. Then obviously I was using the software when it was the portion where I was talking about it. And now I'm using an audio interface and an XLR cable from here on out for the rest of the video. So for the good here and the things that I like, the first one's got to be the sound quality and the versatility. The sound quality overall to me is really good, and the versatility here lends it to a lot of audio adjustments and improvements that you can make. Again, right now I'm using this with an audio interface, but I could also just use this with a USB Type-C cable, and both of those have different things that are going to suit the needs of different groups. So when I'm doing voiceover work, I do like using an audio interface, and I prefer the adjustments that I can get out of that. But honestly, I could also just use the USB Type-C input here because the software does have enough adjustments with it where I can get it to sound close enough or just as good as an XLR cable and the audio interface that I'm using. So regardless of whether or not you're a singer, or maybe you're a PC gamer needing this for game chat, or maybe you do a podcast, or you need this for business with Zoom calls, I think that this has something to offer you. So the two big draws in my opinion, one, the audio quality, which I think with this is really, really good, and two, the versatility with the dual inputs. So now you have more options. Now, as I mentioned, right now I'm using this XLR cable with an audio interface. I was using the USB Type-C input earlier. Typically when I'm on my main PC, I prefer the XLR input with the audio interface because it gives me a good amount of control. But let's say I want to travel and I'm going to go do a podcast or something like that, or just use it for game chat. I'm not going to want to bring that audio interface with me, and the ability to just now bring a USB Type-C cable, I get to use the software, so I still have a good amount of control. So I'm not sacrificing audio quality here. So again, you get this versatility between these two inputs. One, this is easy to travel with, and two, if I do want to use an audio interface to get any of the adjustments that I can't get out of the software, I can do that as well. And it's just this culmination of really good audio and versatility that makes this such a good product. Next, let's cover the negatives with this product, and I only have one, and that's the lack of a stand. The other Maono microphones that I've reviewed in the past have all come with a stand, and it would have been nice to have here. Now, knowing this ahead of time is something where you can actually go ahead and get prepared. You can make sure that you have either a stand or a microphone arm, but it does mean that you will have an extra cost to consider. You might also already have a microphone stand or arm, and if that's the case, then this isn't any issue for you because you're already prepared. Outside of that, I haven't had any issues with this microphone in terms of quality and performance though, which is great, and that's really what matters. One quick side note, if you do have a microphone arm, make sure that it is made for a lighter microphone. If you have one that is made for a more heavy duty microphone, this may be too light of a mic where it's going to want to essentially elevate constantly and you can't get it exactly where you want it to go, which is what I've run into with mine. I usually have a Shure SM7B, and so with this light microphone, it just constantly kind of floats up. So I do have to kind of position this in a way where it will stay put, and if not, it will slowly float up. Last, let's cover the gray area, which are things you may or may not care about, starting with the lights and the trade-off of using the XLR cable. Now, this isn't just specific to this microphone because I don't know of any mic that can get RGB lighting from an XLR cable, which isn't to say that that doesn't exist, but with this mic and others I've reviewed that have dual inputs, you have to use the USB Type-C input to power the lights if you want them on when using an XLR cable to record the audio. So you'll have two cables on your desk, which can actually take up a lot of space, more so than just a single cable. The audio is good enough using just the Type-C cable to record audio instead of using an XLR cable like I've mentioned, but I've always preferred an XLR input personally and using that audio interface and the amount of control that I get out of it. But in order to use that and still get the RGB lighting on this, like I said, you're going to need to use that USB-C cable with this also, which to me is just a little bit of an annoyance because you have all of this clutter now around your desk if you can't really situate the USB Type-C cable in a position that isn't just laying on top of your desk. And the main draw for wanting the RGB lighting to work with an XLR cable, outside of the fact that, yeah, you may like just the cool RGB lighting that's on it, but for those that do serve a function, for instance, if you're going to mute the microphone or anything like that, you lose all of that. So you're not going to know if you've actually muted this. You're going to have to do all of that through the audio interface now. And typically that's going to let you know if you've muted the microphone or anything like that, but it's not directly in front of you. Typically an audio interface is off to the side. I actually hide mine behind the monitor, or I mount it underneath the desk so I really can't see it. And so that's where the draw for me is. If I could see everything on the microphone, it just makes all of that easier instead of having to check and really situate the audio interface in a position that, one, I could see it, but two, if I hide it, I just have to know, hey, you have the gain down or you've muted this or whatever it may be. And last for the gray area is going to be the wind foam, the windshield, the pop filter, whatever you want to call it. So with this, they call it the wind foam, and so it's a pop filter. Here it does a decent job, but I do think it could be a little bit better. Now, I am prone to leaning into the mic. I am prone to essentially being too close and creating that pop. And you've probably heard this a handful of times throughout the video. I've tried really hard not to do that here, but I do wish this was perhaps just a little more dense so it could help with that. If you are somebody that does that like I do, you may want to consider another attachment to get another pop filter on top of this so that you're not prone to doing it. Part of that is also just, regardless of the input, making sure that the gain levels are where they need to be so that you're not essentially hitting that wall and then creating distortion with a pop, or maybe you're just, again, leaning into the microphone and you have these moments of distortion because you've just increased volume with it. Well, that's going to wrap this video up. I'm extremely impressed with the PD200X with its audio quality and versatility, and Maono has become one of my top microphone brands that are not only a quality product, but they're affordable. I'll have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to answer those for you there. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.